Hello, hello, and welcome once again to a Beatles program that we call Things We Said Today. This is a weekly show in which we talk about anything and everything that has to do with the Beatles, any part of their past, and even what's going on today. And I'm Ken Michaels, one of the four co-hosts of the show. Some of you might know me from my other Beatles program called Every Little Thing. And I'm being joined by my three other regulars. First of all, we have the writer for Beatles Examiner, the number one Beatles news source on the internet, that being Steve Marinucci. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ken. Hello, everyone.
And also longtime writer for Beatle Fan Magazine, Al Sussman. Hi, Al.
Hi, Ken. Hello there, everybody.
And our resident musicologist who's written several books on the Beatles and also writes for Beatle Fan as well as many, many publications, that being Alan Kozin. Hi, Alan.
Hey, Ken. Hello, everyone.
And
Hello.
We are very pleased to have with us a very special guest with us on the show today. And he is someone who is near and dear to us in the Beatle family. He goes all the way back to the early years of the Beatles, and we know him for several reasons. First of all, John and Paul wrote many songs for him that he recorded, more than any other artist, as a matter of fact. He also was produced by George Martin, the Beatles producer, and he was managed by Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager. And he's had a career ever since then, and he's still going strong, going out there performing all the time now, coming up with new music as well. And that being Billy J. Kramer. Billy, welcome to Things We Said Today.
Great to see you all.
Billy's a guest with us. He's on the show today because for a couple of reasons. He has a brand new autobiography out, and it's called Do You Want to Know a Secret? The Lennon-McCartney song, which was his first big hit over in the UK. And he's also going to be a special guest at the upcoming Fest for Beatle fans, which takes place at the Hilton Westchester in Rye Brook, New York, on the weekend of April 15th through the 17th. So, Billy, great to have you with us.
Great. Nice to see you all. You know, I'm looking forward to coming to the fest. It's always a lot of fun, and they're always great, nice people. You know,
you've been a wonderful guest there for many years, and putting on great performances and playing the classics and new material too.
Yep, I've had a wonderful time. You know, since I've been doing the fest, they've always treated me like royalty, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are.
Thank
you know,
you.
all the British Invasion artists, you know, whenever they're there, and we've got a handful of them coming up at the fest, including Chad and Jeremy and Peter Asher and Mike Pender of the Searchers. I thought that we would start just by talking about the very beginning of your life and what got you into music, and did you always want to be a performer, and especially a singer and a frontman? Was that always your goal?
No, not really. I was happy to. I wanted to just play guitar behind somebody else and let them sort of take all the pressure, you know. But just circumstances. The band said, you know, your guitar playing's not progressing, so why don't you try and sing and see what happens? And fortunately, people liked it, and I became the front man of the band, and we started playing around all the local hops in Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we got quite a good following, and you know, I met the Beatles before they made records, and we did a lot of shows together. And you know, I was about to pack the whole thing up, and funnily enough, Brian Epstein approached me, and actually he was the only person that I always thought that if anybody was to ever ask me would I, you know, like to do it professionally, he was the only person that I would have done it for. You know, I thought he was the best. I could see what a great job he was doing for the Beatles, and I was very flattered when he approached me, and I jumped at the opportunity. You know.
Did he ever tell you why he approached you? What it was about you that?
John Lennon had seen me and said, "Brian, you should sign that Billy Kramer. He's a good singer."
Oh.
And that's what happened. Also, he saw me performing at the Merseybeat Pole, which is in Merseybeat, which the Beatles came top, and I thought I came third, but I was told recently by my old fan club secretary, but I actually came second, and I was not professional, and Brian saw me performing at the awards ceremony there too. And shortly afterwards, I signed with him.
What do you remember about the Beatles in their early years? Did you think they were really going to go places? And you said you knew them before they got a record contract. So did you see them at the Cavern a lot or what?
So the first time I saw them, which is in the book, was at Litherland Town Hall. And I walked home that night and I said to my friends, this was before Brian was managing the meeting, they're going to be bigger than Elvis. They had such an impact on the audience.
What was it you saw in them, Billy, at that point?
You know, the thing is, I always say this, it's just, you know, stardom or stars to me, it's just something that you can't you can't describe it. You know, people just have a certain way, a charismatic way, and it pulls you in, you know, which they were great, you know. It was like we had a lot of local, very good bands around Liverpool, but when they played at the local hops, you know, everybody would stand around the perimeter of the dance hall and hang out and that. But when the Beatles played, everybody ran to the front of the stage, and you know that's how much impact they had. You know, and that's which, you know. Then whenever they did shows, there was everybody just got at the front before they even started, you know.
So Litherland Town Hall would have been shortly after they came back from Hamburg that first time, I think. And
yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had really galvanized it, you know, into a very cohesive band by that point.
Yes. Stuart Sutcliffe was still with the band. The next time I saw them, believe it or not, was at the Cavern, and I'd heard a whisper that, you know, he'd left, and I thought, oh, I wonder if they're going to be as good. But they were even better, you know. Paul McCartney was playing bass like he'd been playing it his whole life, and I was like, how'd you learn to play that good in such a short spell of time, you know? And I thought they'd really got their act together, you know, more so. You know, and you know, I'm a fan now. I've always been a fan. You know.
How would you describe Stu's playing? None of us obviously have ever heard it. So,
yeah.
Well, you know, it was only with me. It was only that one time, and you know, I thought the whole thing was very loud and everything, and I wasn't really. I wasn't like an expert on bends. I was kind of just, you know, starting to put one together myself. You know. I didn't sort of individually go and analyze each player. You know, it was just the overall effect of the whole thing.
Right, okay.
Were you impressed at all by the fact that the band had more than one lead singer?
That was also because, you know, let's face it, they all sang, they all backed each other up vocally, and I'd never seen a band play and sing just like that before. It was the first time ever, and that obviously I thought was unique, you know.
And what about Pete Best? What did you observe about him?
Pete Best, I did that particular night. I never thought anything about it, but then when I started doing shows at Aintree Institute, places like that, Bob Wooler would say, "Let's hear it at the end of the show one more time for John, Paul, George." And when Pete got on the stage, the girls just jumped on the stage and went crazy, you know.
Wow.
That's how it was, you know. They made a great noise.
Was Pete the who were all the girls screaming for at that point? Was it Paul or Pete or?
I think they screamed for all of them, but it was when Pete got off the drums at the end of the show to take a bow. That's when they all really freaked out and jumped on the stage. I think it may have been that Jimmy Dean kind of thing.
There's a couple of people I know from from over there from the UK tell me that there's still a little bit of resentment in Liverpool because of Pete getting dumped. Do you agree with? I mean, do you understand that, or can you explain that?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll be honest with you. People have talked about it in the past, but I don't know about now. I really don't.
Yeah.
It is 50 years ago, or more.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, I think it was one of those things that the different people had different opinions. It was just it was a talking point.
But what was your impression of the group when Ringo joined?
I really didn't know because I saw them at the Cavern, and I thought they were very good. Obviously, at that time, there was a lot of people who were annoyed because Pete had been, pushed out the band. But then when I started working with the Beatles and touring with them, they were of a solid together unit, and he brought things to the Beatles that Pete didn't. I mean, I just thought he had more tools in his toolbox than Pete.
Exactly.
That's what I thought. And as time's gone by, I think it's been proven that Ringo Starr, the drum parts he came up with for the Beatles were very unique, and I don't think anybody else would have done them as well, or even thought they were very creative drum parts and different, but they fitted in with what the guys wanted.
I was going to say that I was listening today to one of Billy's early albums called Listen. Was that your first album?
Yeah.
And
yes.
The music you're doing is actually quite different from what the Beatles were doing. There's more of a kind of 50s-ish sound, and this is 1963, and you've got, the Do Ron Ron and Great Balls of Fire. And so, although I think you got to be known a little later for doing all of those songs that Lennon and McCartney wrote for you, you were actually doing you weren't really doing the same thing they were doing at the same time. You had your own...
Well, I just didn't I mean, let's face it, I mean, I didn't think of the material as much. I thought the Beatles were very shrewd in what they did. They picked songs that not every band was doing, and everybody thought that they were the Beatles songs. I'd never heard anybody doing, Slow Down and Money and I mean, I'd heard the Chuck Berry things, but at the time, I mean, I think it took me a while. I was still, getting my feet wet and still searching for what I wanted to do and how I wanted to sing, I mean, like even today, I approach it in a whole different way, It's very hard to step outside the box and come up with things that people can identify with, and I've thought a lot more over the years than obviously when I first started. I didn't want to get into Chuck Berry and stuff like that because, quite frankly, everybody was doing it.
Sure.
Nobody's doing it now, so I might try it now.
Yeah. Well, you did a pretty good Great Balls of Fire, I've got to say. It
was pretty good. But a lot of it's sort of like people say, Billy Kramer, the balladeer. Well, frankly, I think I can sing rock and roll as good as what I can sing ballads, and that's not being it's not being blasé. It's a fact, and I like to sing as many different types of songs as I can.
Billy, you talk in the book about a demo that John made for you of "Do You Want to Know a Secret," which you say in the book is lost. That's too bad. But can you describe a little bit of that?
It was a Grundig tape, a spool, and he described on the tape that he had done it in the quietest room he could find, and he apologized for the quality, and at the end of the song he flushed the toilet, which I thought was very funny. It was very basic, and I learned the song with the Dakotas. We came up with the arrangement, and we did it the way we did it. I think we made a very good record of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was a surprise. I didn't know whether it was going to be a hit or not. You can't always tell.
Right.
But I think we made a good record.
You don't know what happened to the. You don't know what happened to the demo, though.
Well, in them days, you never thought about collecting things. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether the band picked it up. It's like handwritten lyrics and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we used to walk out and leave everything.
Mm.
That's just the way it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was a 19-year-old kid from Liverpool. I never thought it would end up the way it has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And these things would be quite frankly, I did every town and every city we did weeks in. I never asked the Beatles for an autograph. I just thought, I thought there's enough of that going on without me, jumping in. I never bothered.
Outside of the I'm sure you appeared on the BBC several times. Outside of that, did you ever record the band ever record live?
Believe it or not, we recorded live on a tour in the United States, and it was produced by I think Ron Goodman, who produced the Hollies.
Oh, Ron Richard.
Ron Richard came over to the States, and we were going to do a live album, but it was just like there was so much hysteria going on that it was undecipherable. A few years ago, they managed to, with today's technology, to be able to make some of it, made it good, and it surprised me.
Has it been put out? It hasn't been put out though, right?
It was on. There was a box set a few years ago on.
Okay.
One of the CDs was that,
Okay, I think I know which box set you're talking about now.
Yeah.
But okay. Mm-hmm.
That's the box set with the John Lennon "I'm in Love" song.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which was a funny time. We were at EMI. I think we were doing a B-side of one of the other records, and John and Paul come running in saying, "You got to record this song. You got to record this song." And we put it down within we only had 15, 20 minutes left, and I think we did 2 takes, and it lay there for years, and I don't know why we just didn't think of it. But the next thing I was in Mickey Mantle's eating, and I heard it come over the tannoy, and I was like, "What?" about 40 years later, there was I think they put it out because there was some bantering with John Lennon and I. There was a lot that they cut out. Some of the bantering they didn't, he made this come out like, you sound like Adam Faith, you fool. But there was other things said,
It actually came out on a compilation in 1991.
Yeah.
I interviewed you at the time when it came out. And it's 25 tracks, the best of Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. And you can hear the bantering at the very beginning. It's very faint. They got to struggle sometimes to make out what you and John are saying. But
I couldn't get the tune, you see. And when I did, he said, "You sound like Adam Faith, you fool." And but there was other things said. I think they did turn it up a bit, as on other discs.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was kind of cheap of EMI. It annoyed me. I thought, aren't they making enough out of the Beatles without doing stuff like this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before you were saying before when you were talking about "Do You Want to Know a Secret" that it was your own arrangement, the band's own arrangement.
Yes.
Didn't John and Paul kind of guide you through their songs, how they wanted it to sound?
With that song, we learned it just prior to Hamburg, and we played it over in Hamburg. They did come down to the studio when we recorded the song, but they were quite happy with the way we played it. You know.
Did you guys prefer mono over stereo, Billy, or were you okay with the stereo remixes on your songs?
What I've heard, I didn't like some of the stereo stuff. Sounded weird to me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we know the Beatles didn't like it, and I know, and Peter Asher told me one time that he didn't like it with their stuff, and I was just curious how you felt too.
It sounds strange to me. You know, it's like it's different, but it's not a pleasing different. You know, it's acceptable, but to me, I prefer it the way it was.
Okay. Did you have any input on any of the mixes at all, or?
No, you know, I'll be honest with you. You know, I mean, we did our thing, and that was it. Back in them days, we would get an acetate maybe, and or they'd mix it on a different day. You know, as time went by, you know, there was things like I made certain records where I did go back in the studio and remake them, and remix them, and things like that. You know. I had a ballad called "You Make Me Feel Like Someone," and when I got an acetate with that, I said this is not good enough, and I flew down to London and we remixed it. We redid the vocals and everything, you know. But let's face it, we were all young kids. What did we know about recording in the very early days? You know.
Sure.
You did a song, apart from the things that you did that John and Paul wrote, you did a song that George Martin and Bob Willer wrote called I Know. So can you tell us something about that? And also maybe what it was like working with George Martin, seeing as, he just died recently.
Well, I mean, at the time, I knew nothing about publishing, and to me it's a song and it's a B-side, and it was something that came very quickly, and it was very easy, you know. I don't think I would do that today, you know. George, to me, George was a gentleman, and he was a big help in putting the songs together, you know. But there were times when we had differences of opinion on certain things, you know. But, it was no big deal, you know. I commented when I recorded Bed to Me, I said, it's in the wrong key. And he said, I think it should be in E. I said, I think it should be in D. And we tried it in E for half a day. And then after lunch, we tried it in D, and it worked, you know, which is one of those things. Quite honestly, I recorded I Call Your Name that day within about 20 minutes, and I wanted it to be an A-side, and George said, you sound like John Lennon, and I said, well, that can't be bad, you know, but I didn't have any real say in what they put out, you know, but I had to put that out, you know, because I thought it was more rocky than the things I'd done, and I always had the feeling, you know, with both Brian and George, you know, they were quite content to keep me in that one particular place, and I always felt that the time to change is, you know, it's no use waiting until you have a few records that don't do so well and then change. I felt the time to change was when it was still happening for you, you know. You know, I was never, I was very unassuming and not a pushy kind of person back then, else I would have made changes, you know, and gone for more rocky type of songs. You know, we had a very young audience, and I felt it was the kind of thing they wanted. And I felt, you know, you have to break out of the bag.
Sure.
You know, but it was a very enjoyable period. It was a learning period. It was the start. You know, what better start can you have than you know, firstly, John Lennon coming up with the name Billy J. Kramer, you know, and then you're being produced by George Martin. That was a really a good start for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
When you went to New York with Brian in November '63, and we think of that trip now as when Brian arranged the Ed Sullivan shows for the Beatles, but he actually went to look into your career, I think, with Liberty Records, right? I mean, that you were actually the primary reason for that trip. Do you remember that?
I remember that trip. I think it was, you know, I think it was to push me on Liberty Records, but I think it was also to get Ed Sullivan and things like that together. You know, I'd seen the competition in America, I knew it would be very difficult. You know, Cliff Richard, who is still the biggest selling artist in Great Britain, had failed to crack the market. You know, the market was very strange. I mean, like I remember, like Rolf Harris was number one with Timey Kangaroo Down Sport, and
right.
You know, and it's funny, you know, because we were staying in the Waldorf Astoria, and I remember playing some of Jerry's records and Silla's records and my records. I don't think people were really hip to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't know about the Beatles, you know. And I said, well, I think you will in a short time, you know, because I still had all the newspapers with Beatlemania and stuff like that, which I showed people.
I guess he should have taken you to see Murray the K.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I didn't know anything about the scene. That's all. You know.
And Brian,
it was a whole. No, I don't suppose so. So, you know, let's face it. I mean, America at that time was a whole different thing, and you know, to me, there's, you know, it's very obvious that it took something as big and as unique as the Beatles to open the doors. You know, and they opened the doors for everybody. I felt, you know, they opened the doors for all, you know, the British invasion, and a lot of guys got a break who I don't think would have done, you know. And I still think that, you know, a lot of British people are still selling records there today, and I think it's only because of the Beatles, you know.
Sure.
To me, that they were amazing, you know.
What was it like being caught up in that whole storm in, you know, in early '64, Billy, with the and being, you know, kind of with the Beatles leading the crest? What was it like for you, and you know, to be in that wave?
It was a lot of excitement, you know, very different, you know. I mean, it was a great experience. It was very exciting, you know, to play places that are so big that you could drive into in a coach, you know. It was, you know, in England, we'd arrive at a theatre and you'd fight your way in. There was no security, and you know, you fight your way out. And when we came to America, you know, we just drove in a coach and did these big shows and drove out. It was amazing, you know. It was a great time, you know. I really am thankful that I was there to share this and get that experience, because, you know, I don't think anything like that will ever happen again. You know, I think it's the greatest chapter in the history of rock and roll music. I don't think anything will ever top it. And to be there and right at the start and see it all happen was fantastic, you know.
You mentioned before that, you know, that you have this kind of image of the, you know, the balladeer singer, but that you actually preferred to do more rock and roll. Now, of the, say, the, you know, the Lennon-McCartney team, then, which one of the two did you feel closer to musically, John or Paul?
It depended, you know, on you know, funny enough, they used to both come together, you know. And, you know, I've never been one of these people who've analyzed, well, John wrote this and Paul. I'm certain John.
Like we do, yeah.
I'm certain John wrote "You Want to Know a Secret," I'm certain he wrote Bad to Me and I Call Your Name. I think From a Window, to me, was definitely Paul.
Yeah.
Because he came on his own that day. I'll Keep You Satisfied, they both came along. That was it. John came on his own when I did Bad to Me.
But kind of as your musical, your own musical preference, did you feel closer to one or the other?
I think John. Yeah. He was. I think he was the rock and roll guy. He had the edge.
Right.
But they were all unique in for different ways. So, they had John with his his stuff, and Paul with his stuff and his balladeer stuff, and to me it was the whole thing.
One of the things I really enjoyed going through the book was how honest you are. It's not your book is really honest in some spots and very opinionated about the way things were going. And let me just ask you briefly about three people. Brian would be one of them. John would be another, and Scylla would be the other.
Right.
Give me just a real thumbnail on each of the three of them, Billy.
Brian was a gentleman, and was very, very kind and considerate. Scylla, I would take her into my parents' home, and we'd sit and have tea and biscuits, and it was that kind of a relationship, really. I was always like, funny enough, when I was on tour, I was always saying to her and her husband, "What's the matter with you?" Because, like, believe it or not, I was the quiet, humble guy, but I was partying like an animal then, and I would say, like, I don't know how people like you can just do a gig and have all that attention and just go home to bed. I'm still buzzing. I got to be out on the town, That's how I was, and I was never afraid to talk to any of the Beatles. John, there was that incident at Paul's 21st, which is, to me, it's like a story that's been told so many different ways. But to me, it was just he'd had too many drinks and he was out of line. I was very sorry that a lot of things. I never reacquainted myself with John after some time, when he moved to America, and I regret that I didn't take up the opportunity to do that,
Were you here by then?
Yeah, I was here doing working, and I just thought I could leave him alone. He was in a different place, he divorced Cynthia, who I liked very much. I was very fond of her. I was a bit shocked and surprised when he went off with Yoko. And I just thought, we've all, at that time, I was married myself. I had 2 children, and we'd all found different roads. It was just, that's the way it was,
Can you talk a little bit more about George Martin and what he brought to your recordings? Did he make suggestions at all on the arrangements of them?
He made suggestions, like in the constructions of the songs and the chords. He would, because he was a refined musician. Like when John came along with Bed to Me, George, to me, was the guy who put the icing on the song. He'd say to the guys, like, instead of playing a sharp, can you play a flat or a diminished? Or whatever, and he'd work on the arrangement actually more with the band than me, in putting it together. And he would do things like he would overdub the piano, playing the same lines as the bass, which really pushed the track along. A lot of stuff. But I'm not going to tell you everything.
Gotta read the book.
Read the book.
Yeah.
Read the book.
At first, when I first met George, I mean, it took a while for me to get comfortable. I felt I was talking to the Duke of Edinburgh, He was so refined and well spoken, and I was like this Scouser from Liverpool, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned
Wow.
Scylla before. I just wanted to ask you about Scylla because to people in America, we don't know her that well, and unfortunately, she's more a footnote in Beatle history.
Right.
What did she mean to you and also to England because she was such a big star there?
She became like really big, and it wasn't for singing. She went into hosting TV shows, like the dating game and things like that. And she had a terrific personality. She was a lot of fun to the public, and the public really took her on. And I think funny enough, I think it started by there was one TV show, a series she was doing, and in the last series she was like crying, and I think the public the poor girl, I wasn't a put on, but people just loved everything she did. She was the girl next door or whatever,
You also mentioned in the book you have a picture of yourself and Davy Jones, and you mentioned that you met Davy when he was doing Oliver.
Yes.
Can you talk just briefly about Davy and your friendship with him?
I met him then very briefly, and I thought he was a cute kid, and I think he was very good. I thought he was very talented, and then when the Monkees started, he was one of the few people that he is like what I said before about some people have this charismatic thing, and to me, Davy Jones was the guy in the Monkees with that. I think I don't know the other Monkees that well, but to me, Davy was the Monkees. I don't think the Monkees would have been the Monkees without Davy. That personality and that smile and charm, and he was a very talented. He could dance and sing, and he was a real talent.
Interesting.
And that's my take on it.
Okay.
I don't know whether I'm off beam or not. I know Mickey Dolenz sang on a lot of the records, and he did a very good job. But I thought the magic came from Davy.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was definitely a lot of charisma going with him, and obviously one of the reasons he was picked was he was British. I think that had that.
Oh no! You think that? I never thought of that one.
Really?
No, I never. I thought he was just picked because he was great for that part.
Oh, I think he was great for the part too, but I think the British thing had a whole lot to do with it. It really did.
I think he'd have made it anyway.
I think he would have too, because he had started long before that. I mean, he'd had that solo contract with Coal Gems, and
Yes.
Coal Gems had tried to push him before Oliver, because I've seen the ads, and so it's very that's a good point there, that he would have made it. He definitely would.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. My wife and I rode with him in limos on quite a few occasions, and he was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Billy, can you talk a little bit about the other acts that Brian managed at the time, like Jerry and the Pacemakers and The Foremost? And there were a lot of acts in his stable. And I was wondering if at any one time was it ever too much for him to handle, to juggle all these acts? And just bear in mind that he had to deal with the Beatles too. He dealt with the biggest band in the world, so he had all these acts at the same time. What was it like for him?
I don't know what it was like for him, but all I know is this: that it was kind of strange, because I always felt it was like the Beatles month, and everything was the Beatles, and then it was Jerry's month, and then it'd be my month, and then it'd be Scylla's month. I often say to my wife that the amazing thing with Brian was I could always call him. anytime and get a hold of them without a problem. Whereas today you send people an email and they take a month to answer it. As big as organization became, he always had the time for his artists. I think had he lived, I think things would have changed. When the Beatles decided to not tour anymore. Because I think I don't really know, because I never spoke in any great detail to Brian about it. But I think, let's face it, really, they were off the road, and I don't think there was the same amount of pressure on him, as there was before. He came to see me. The last time I saw Brian was at the Shakespeare in Liverpool, and he said, you've worked very hard on your craft, and I'm going to the States, and the next time, when I come back, we'll work on a new project and get you back out there, record-wise. And I was going to make records for his record label, and obviously it didn't happen, and that was a big loss for the whole of show business, but it was a big loss for me. I didn't know the business, and I was very protected by Brian, and all his artists were. I don't know what their relationship. I don't know what Jerry's relationship was with him. We never discussed it. We worked together, but things like that never came up. That's just. I didn't know what a relationship with Brian was like. I haven't a clue. I did hear recently that, her husband was taking over a career when a contract ran out with Brian, and Brian was upset about it. But, I don't know whether that is true. You hear little bits and pieces like that, but, I'm basically a person that I just get on doing what I'm doing, I try to not get involved in other people's things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When the Beatles started Apple, did you consider approaching them about recording for that label?
I never. I at that time, I'll be very honest with you. I wasn't really thinking about my career. I'm very honest in saying I was more interested in having a good time. I was more interested in where it was all happening and where I could think I was having fun. I wasn't, but that's what I was up to. I was more interested in going to clubs and bars and stuff like that.
So were you still giving concerts at that time?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was still doing concerts. I'd party it and around London, and then I'd go on the road and do what I had to do. I at the time, I just thought, as long as I go on the stage and I do a good job, that's all that matters. That's and it's nobody else's business what I do when I'm away from performing. And in a way, I know I was wrong, because it's it was my business to be a sort of role model, I felt, in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Besides the book coming out, what other plans have you got going in the next few months?
I've got plans for quite a few things that are at a very early stage that I'm thinking about. One is for a show, a performance, a particular way I want to do a show that I want to record and film. It's going to be like a multimedia thing. It's going to be live, so people see live music. It's going to be sort of my version of like the history of rock and roll. It's going to have audience, participation and stuff like that. It's something it's very early, and we're just putting the ideas together. Because it's I hate to be morbid, but I'm at a time in my life where I just want to try and do as many things as I can. And while I enjoy it, which I do immensely. I want to do as many things as I can.
Well, that's not morbid.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing more. There's nothing more about it. But I mean, I've had a lot of friends and a lot of people close that have died recently, and it's you do think about that.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
None of us are immortal.
True.
Billy, you made an album a few years ago called "I Won the Fight,"
Yes.
which I know you're very proud of, and I've gotten the chance to see you perform many of the songs from it. And apart from the fact that the songs are really outstanding, you've actually been very involved with songwriting in recent years. Is that something that's only happened recently for you? Is it something that comes naturally to you? Talk about the songwriting.
The songwriting, we used to try and get involved with the Dakota State, like kind of pushed me out of it. So I didn't really bother, and I was always felt that a lot of my ideas weren't good enough. And I wrote the song "Liverpool with Love," which started with me just playing a guitar in the house, and I came up with a line that I had a girl named Maureen, and my wife said that's pretty catchy, and I just worked on it till I put the whole thing together. And at that time I wrote "Sunsets of Santa Fe." I Won the Fight was, funny enough, was more or less just me and a couple of musicians one day started jamming along, and it just happened,
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've been working on a lot of different songs. I try to do something nearly every day now.
That's great.
I've got quite a lot of songs put aside already.
So have you got a new album project that maybe some of these songs might turn up in?
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's great to see you when we see you in concert now. You mix the old with the new.
Right.
And, people get to hear that, you're still vital, you're still out there, you're still being very creative. And in so many ways, the fact that you're so heavily involved with the songwriting, that's very impressive.
Well, thank you. I mean, I Won the Fight was the first time I ever sort of did a whole project myself. It was all my input. It was things that I'd had in mind for many years, and just really I'd never felt I was in the right place to do them, and it just suddenly all one thing rolled into another, and I'm very proud of the album. And that's it, I'm glad that it did have songs on it that took me away from what I'd done in the past. I'll always have to do the old songs, but I thought that some of the songs were good songs, and people saw a side of me that they hadn't before.
Yeah.
There was rockabilly, there was rock, there was country and ballads. That's why I thought it was good.
Yeah, we were talking before the show about how when I've seen you live, one of my favorite moments in your show is when you're kind of off the cuff and you're doing a lot of 50s rock and roll and what you feel like doing in the moment, and it comes across as being very spontaneous.
Well, when we have a rehearsal with the band, I always say I run through that section, and I'll write down, say, half a dozen songs and say, these are the songs we're going to do. But when I get on the stage, I don't know why, I just forget them and go on to other things. They're just so good. They're such great musicians that they can just fall into it, And it's all about fun. That's another thing, It's life is too serious to take serious. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in just about a month, you're going to be appearing at the Fest for Beatles fans.
Yes.
At the Hilton Westchester in Rye, New York, and you have a great band behind you. Tell us something about your current band's lineup.
The current band is Liberty DeVito on drums.
Right.
Muddy Shoes on bass. Andy Burton on keyboards. And we're going to have Steve Conte on guitar.
Wow.
That's who's going to be playing at Beatlefest. And another rhythm player, Larry Fitzgerald. That's going to be the band.
Terrific. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just think, it's amazing that, to have been around as long as I have and still have as much fun and enjoyment, And to me, they're my friends, they're my people, I think they all know me and I know them. It's one of them things, They're all very nice, and they say, nice to see you, Billy, and it's a good feeling,
That's part of the joy in seeing you live is seeing the enthusiasm in you because you still love performing so much. And I also get a big kick out of, and lots of Beatle fans will be very happy to know that in addition to all the Lennon-McCartney stuff from the 60s that you recorded then and had hits with, you also cover other material, and you've done Jealous Guy in concert.
Yes.
You've done a really nice version of that. You did Handle with Care. Handle with Care.
Well, to me, they're great songs, and at the time, it was what I wanted to do. It's so funny because I remember when I first wanted to do Jealous Guy, we had someone in the band who said, "Well, you're not John Lennon," and I said, "I know I'm not." I said, "I'm who I am, and I'm going to sing the song. It's a good song, and I'm going to do it the way I would do it." And we did it, and I was very proud to do the song, and very pleased with the response it got. I did it on the tour, the Solid Silver 60s tour in England, and people loved it. I was very happy about that.
No, it's really moving, your version of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's one of them songs. It's a good song to sing.
Right.
And I enjoy it. That's it. I mean, when you think about it, you shouldn't sing songs you don't enjoy.
Right.
And you feel so much at home when I hear you do the other British invasion stuff from the 60s. And when you do Glad All Over, and it's wonderful. That's such a crowd pleaser.
Well, I've seen a lot of performance, and one thing I'm not is, I've never been self-indulgent, and in a set list, I always consider how this, even if it's a new song, is this song good enough that people hearing it first time, it's going to register with them, and they're going to enjoy it, and I do think about the audience a lot, because that's the bottom line is that's what you're there for. You're there to do a show, to please people, make people happy, and have a good time, as well as have a good time yourself.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, we're just a bit out of time here, and Billy, it's been great having you on the show.
It's
I
gone
want to
so
remind
fast. It's gone so fast.
We'll have to have you on again.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we spent more time with waiting for you.
Yeah, there's all these technical problems that our listeners don't even know about with Skype and all. And
well, I'm going to tell them.
Sometimes
No,
I'm in trouble now.
Outtakes. We're going to put out the outtakes one day.
Where's
Dave? Where's Ken?
Yeah. HMC is going to get our outtakes.
I missed the show a few months ago because I couldn't get Skype to work. So,
Right.
Oh, that's well. You better call Mr. Skype.
okay.
There we go.
Well, listen, it's been nice talking to all of you. And are you all going to Fest?
I will be there.
I will be there.
Well, don't forget to come say hello.
Oh, we won't forget it all. And we want to remind everybody, your book is called Do You Want to Know a Secret? The fest happens the weekend of April 15th through the 17th, again at the Hilton Westchester in Rye Brook, New York. And you will be there, Billy, and we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much.
And let me mention that the book has a lot of stories about the Beatles and a lot of other people. But I mean, there are some, and there's rare pictures in there. It's a great book. It really is.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome, Billy.
I'll be digging into the book right after this conversation ends.
Thank you.
All right. So, anybody have anything they'd like to plug before we go?
Anything to plug?
Yeah. Just anybody, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can contact me at BeatlesExaminer@gmail.com.
I will be. Yes, I will be performing on the Saturday afternoon.
Right.
You know, because sometimes people don't know and that they might miss it, or But I'll be performing on the Saturday afternoon.
And your book will be there, right? You'll be able to sell your book there?
Yes, definitely.
And you'll be signing copies.
Of course I will.
And everyone else who doesn't go has to wait until May 3rd to get it in the bookstore, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
As far as the technical problems that we have in the show, I have the name of someone named Alex that I'm supposed to be contacting. I don't know. That'll be helping us out at all.
Magic.
Oh,
Alex.
that's a great line.
Well, the thing is, though, I think it's a great idea to be able to sit around and talk about things. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
And the fun thing is that we're on all sides of the country. We're not located in one spot. That's the cool thing.
It's good knowing you people. It's kind of weird calling stations that you don't know anybody.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you want to talk to us, Billy, feel free. I mean, let us know. We will. We're always glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
We use the word royalty, and you are just that. Because you've got so much history to share, and always you can talk about whatever you're doing today here on the show.
Thank you very much.
Al, you got something you want to plug?
Still there.
Okay.
Are we finished?
Actually, we didn't wrap up the show completely, but I just want Al and Alan to say their goodbyes, and if they have anything to plug, and I have one thing to plug.
Nothing from this end.
All right.
The only thing I would say is that if you guys haven't caught up with my obituary of George Martin in the New York Times, and also I had a companion piece about his production techniques on 5 recordings of the Beatles, you can find it at nytimes.com.
And both are excellent.
Yes.
And that production techniques article got tweeted by Michael Nesmith.
Oh yeah, that was a kick.
Well, I was saying that the amazing thing about George Martin is the technology then as to what it is now, and what he did was amazing. To make the albums and to make Sgt. Pepper, to me, that to me shows the genius.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Right.
No,
there's no auto-tune.
Right.
No computers, and he did it. He did it.
And also, EMI was kind of behind the times, technically, compared to what was going on in the U.S. Correct?
I think they dragged a bit.
Yeah.
But that's British.
Right. Four tracks. That's all.
Right.
Yes. So I'll see you guys.
Okay.
All right, Billy.
All right, Billy. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. And I just want to mention one thing. I do have a special contest that by the time this show gets posted should be up on my website. We just had Jude Kessler as a guest here on our show. And I'll be giving folks the chance to win 2 of her books, as well as her husband, Randy Kessler, with a poster of the doors of famous venues in Beatle history, like the Beatles family's homes. You can win that on my website, and Jude will be a guest at the upcoming Grammy Museum Beatles Symposium in Cleveland, Mississippi. That's on April 1st and 2nd, and she will also be a guest at the fest as well.
Right.
April 15th through the 17th at the Hilton Westchester in Rybrook. Okay, so if you can, check out my website for the special contest to win Jude's books and the Randy Kessler poster at kenmichaelsradio.com. All right. And so, for Billy J. Kramer, Steve Marinucci, Al Sussman, and Alan Kozin, this is Ken Michaels thanking all of you for listening, and we will see you next time.